you've done far and beyond for you to spend quality time with each individual, to have a cup of tea. It's nice to have a conversation and to share in terms of what you've seen through history, because they've lived it.
And you can see through those stories how actually it's not about them, it's not about their decisions, it's just about the system. I believe that my thesis, at least for the broader community, is actually make visible those stories.
Hello, I'm Francisca, and welcome to Ph.D. Hard Talk. Thank you so much for wanting to have a conversation with myself and to share your work with the audience out there. How are you today?
Really good. Actually, thank you to you. You invited me, and this is amazing. I really love the program. I was looking at a lot of chapters yesterday, and it's super fun. So thank you very much.
Exciting times. Right. So could you please just introduce your research to us, explain a little bit about it, and then we'll crack on in terms of the questions.
Sure. So I'm a sociologist. That's the first thing to know about my research. I have been a sociologist my whole life. So everything is about sociology in my life. So my research is actually about older people. Mm-hmm. My question was actually, I was trying to understand how older people cope with their pension system and how they do it through their social support networks. Because in general, you have this belief that older people, at least they have their social support network. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to look into that because you always have that belief, and it's like, yeah, right, but what is happening in there? So I was trying to just making visible the complexity of those social support networks.
Excellent. So you did mention, in terms of first things first, I'm a sociologist. What is sociology for people who don't know what sociology is?
I think a lot of sociologists don't know neither the answer. So that's a really good question.
We've got political.
Yes. Well, okay. So I would say sociology is in general the more broad definition. It would be studying society. So if you have biology or molecular kind of laboratory researchers, they study, for example, the molecules. You have other people who study cells, who study the body, who study, I don't know, maybe actually you also have people from the industry who study how to make things work in a program or behind Google, those stuff. In sociology, it's about society, it's about groups of people, how they behave, how you can actually study those behaviors, and how actually you can understand what is happening in the everyday life. So it's really complex because it's every time changing, and especially with, for example, social movements, you have a lot of studies with those stuff. So it's something really like contingents, I could say. It's all the time is changing, but in a broad way, it's about the understanding of society.
Okay, so in terms of sociology then, would you say that we concentrate more on ethnographic research, or do you do quantitative as well and go into other forms of research, or is it, just based on how you've explained it there?
Actually, I love that discussion because it's a huge discussion mm-hmm. Again. You have a lot of people who make research from a quantitative side, and you have all the people behind the surveys, national surveys. There is a lot of sociologists behind it. But also you have people doing, in the same sense, models or that kind of stuff, really high level analysis. But also you have the other people who are doing qualitative analysis. And there you have the ethnographic approach. You have a lot of, different techniques, but I'm more into mixed methods approach, which is something that you combine both. So then again, we have a more complex scenario.
So you've mentioned mixed methods there. How would you define mixed methods to somebody who doesn't know what mixed methods is?
So first, mixed method is trying to combine those two words. You have, for one side, the numbers and the statistics, and from the other side, you have the words that people say, the discourses, the whole sense of life or everyday life, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is trying to combine those two to trying to answer a question. So it's not so much about what kind of methodology you use.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot about the questions. So it's like, okay, I'm wondering about older people and their everyday life. So how can I answer that question in a really good way? So for example, I have a survey. I also have interviews. I also have some survey data that it was old, so but it still could be used, like demographic kind of data. Also, I have photographies. That's another qualitative stuff. So the thing is that you try to combine all those things to try to answer the same question. So that would be mixed method, trying to look from different perspectives, the same problem.
Okay, so in your own opinion, again, would you say that mixed methods is the best form of, strategy to answer your research question in particular?
Yes. So, well, I could say I choose it because of, yes.
Well, you have to defend it.
Exactly. Actually soon, so definitely I need to answer that. So yes, I will say that each method that you choose, each tool, a specific one, like just interviews, for example, they shape the kind of results that you get. So using mixed method, you actually kind of seeing a lot of different answers of the same problem. So if you have the complement of all of them, you actually can see more than only looking with one method. So for sure, in my thesis, it was clear that mixed method, it was something really useful. Just to give you an example.
Yes.
For example, I have a survey. And through the survey, I have some results. And for example, gender, it was not so significant. It was, which is weird because gender is significant in any possible scenario, probably. So I was like, okay, it's apparently not significant in there. Let's see what happened in the interviews. But actually in the interviews, it was super significant, to be honest, because all the people that I interviewed, almost all women, they describe their own lives through constraints, which was something that actually shaped the whole results of what we understand by social support in my thesis. So definitely through the qualitative side of the qualitative data that I have got, I have results about how gender, it was a relevant variable to consider, which is something that I didn't saw in the survey. So there you have it. If I didn't use mixed method, probably I would say, okay, gender is not relevant. Okay, whatever. Let's go with another variable wherever.
Okay, that's really interesting. And in terms of your paper, I mean, I've read through it. You use the word old people. In terms of your research, what makes a person old? From what age to what age does old refer to, so that we've got understanding? Because we will share the link for your paper so that we can just cover that aspect, if that's okay.
Sure. So actually I use the definition that they stay in Chile, because my case of study is Chile in South America. And in that country, you have the age of where you retire. So for example, for women it's 60 and for men it's 65. So I actually use that parameter because I definitely agree, maybe it's complicated to ask people, okay, you consider yourself as an old person, or how do you consider yourselves respectively with your age?
Yes.
But I use that parameter, like just when you get retired. So I just interview people who was already retired.
Okay. So in terms of the case study, again, when I was going through your work, you've got 30 people, all right? Yes. That's the number that you worked with. What made the number 30 enough for your research?
Yes, so actually what I did is something relevant to mention about that number is that they are separated by gender and also by socio-economical level. Yes. So it's different, the distribution. So it's like, for example, 15 men, 15 women, and also 10 of each socio-economical level. So I have high, middle, and low. But I would argue that the number, especially for this kind of research, is not so relevant in the sense of how many interviews should I get, which is something that I was super worried the first year. Like, should I get, I don't know, 100 or whatever, like how many?
I think
how many
for each PhD student, we all go through that. What is the right number?
Exactly. And I would argue that, at least in my case, it was like in some point of your research, when you are in fieldwork and you are doing the interviews, you just say, okay, I'm already repeating the same kind of information. You are already like have enough information, and you say, okay, maybe this is enough because I already have that kind of information. And with the new interviews, you are not summarizing anything else. So in some point, you need to make the decision accordingly with the qualitative aspect of your research. So I would say in my research that happened, for example, in one socioeconomical level, that happened in 7 participants. Like in 7 participants, I would say, okay, maybe this is enough, but I wanted to check. So still I did 3 more interviews. And then it was like, okay, this is enough. Apparently I'm okay with this. And then it ended up in 30. But it was just a good match. It sounds good, like 13, really organized number. It was not so organized.
In the background, it's never organized. I can agree and attest to that. So in terms of Santiago, why choose Santiago for your research? You could have chosen any country. Why go for that country in particular?
Yes, so I can answer from 2 sides.
Okay.
Because I definitely believe science is embedded with the personal life. So for one side, yes, it's the country where I came from. So it's something that I feel particularly interesting because of that. But in the second point, and I think it's more relevant for the research, is that actually Santiago and the whole Chile is a country in which it was done the first neoliberal system of pensions in the world. So it was actually an experiment. They call it like that in many articles. It's not my words. So it was an experiment from people who was studying how to do better system of pensions in the 70s. And they were studying actually in Chicago, in United States. And they found that in Chile, we have a dictatorship by them. So it was like, you didn't have any opposition to deal with. So let's try this model that it works perfectly theoretically. Let's try it in that country. And that's it. So it's a perfect experiment, like natural experiment that has been there for the, I don't know, last 40 years, because it was the 80s. In the 80s, it was implemented for the first time, but it was in the middle of the dictatorship. So the whole scenario in which the system pension was constructed is super special. Like it's really, I don't know if in a good way, but you understand what I mean.
I do understand.
In particular.
It's a great case study to conduct any research, basically based on the historical elements. I understand. So in terms of the word neoliberal, for those who don't know what it means, what does it mean for your research?
Sure. Yes. In my case in particular, it's about the system of pensions. So in that system, you have that the whole market is constructed in a way in which you have your funds and you have your 10% of savings and you give it to another companies. But those companies are not so many, are a couple of them. And they do, well, what they do with the money is they take it and invest everything in the stock exchange. So it's like all your retirement depends on the worldwide behavior. So it's definitely not your decision. You don't have any choice. You are just leaving your money in their hands. And in some point when you are 60 or 65, you go to the company and you say, well, I would like to get retired. And they give you like a form and say to you, okay, this is your retirement. And that's accordingly with the whole economic behavior through the whole life of this person. So it's not something, it depends of the person.
Right. So in terms of your research then, how does it benefit the wider community back in Santiago?
Sure. So a lot of researchers and a lot of people in the community in Chile still believes that this kind of system actually creates opportunities and not inequalities, or doesn't allow poverty in a lot of sense. So what I'm trying to do with this research is actually making visible the stories of older people, the real stories. I spend sometimes 8 afternoons drinking tea with older people. They were telling me their stories, the whole story of their lives. And you can see through those stories how actually sometimes it's not about them, it's not about their decisions, it's just about the system and how it is, and how they get some specific pension that actually doesn't allow them to live in well, but actually they are more like surviving every day. So I believe that my thesis, at least for the broader community, what it's trying to make is actually make visible those stories. And I would love to tell those stories because they give me the confidence to do it. So I think that's the whole meaning of the thesis.
Okay, so in terms of your next steps then, are you planning to get in contact with policymakers to ensure that there is a positive change for those who are elderly, be it 60 to 65, because, you know,
yeah. Sure.
for men and women, are you working on that? Is that something that you're pushing?
Yes. So actually I'm starting a postdoc for the last 11 days. I already started, and it's about the same topic. Yes.
Look at that.
It's amazing. Actually, it was really surprised, the whole news and everything, because I still don't defend my thesis. I have the defense in December.
Wow.
So yes, so actually I started this job in this institute, which actually focuses on older people, and it focuses on caring of older people. And they have a huge and amazing like focus on public policy, and they have a lot of people who work in that. So actually my vision, at least, because I'm just starting, I would love to see how my work get to be known through this community and through this institute, because I think it's the place to make those approach and make something more concrete and help them like in a more concrete way. So I get the feeling with my PhD, sometimes you get the feeling that, okay, how I get this to outside, right? Because you are in a bubble of your PhD for almost 4 years or 3 years or whatever is the time in your PhD. I did it in England, that's why it's different the time. But definitely I was worried about this outcome. So I was looking at a place in which I could get that through the academia, but also getting outside academia. Because it's there where it's relevant, the research, right? The results are relevant in there, not in academia sometimes. So hopefully I'm going to get something done in that sense, in that place.
Fingers so in terms of going back to Chile, and congratulations on your postdoc, what do you think the young people there should be doing after hearing all these stories? I mean, I partly grew up with my grandmother and she would share certain things, and I would like to think it's the same in Chile. So, you know, what do you think the young people need to do? Because nowadays we've got social media, you know, they can get their voices heard, but obviously it's always a bit scary when the country's got a bit of a history when it comes to dictatorship. And, you know, what advice would you give them?
Sure. So I will say something that appears a lot in my thesis, and I realized because the whole literature review that I have done is that you always seem to understand or research about all the people as a passive actors, like they are in there and that's it, and you need to care for them. And what I would say, and actually I show it with my thesis, is that they are super active in the whole society. They actually care a lot for grandkids, for example. I also grew up with my grandmother and my grandfather in my house. So definitely I know about that. But in general, society tends to see them as really passive people. So what I would say is, I would advise like really encouraging people to look at them as an active actors, and they have a voice and they have something to say. In general, when you see pension system and when you see people studying these systems, you don't see anyone asking them what they need. Yeah. And it's like the most basic thing. It's like they are the people who should be the whole system about. It's not about the system, it's about them.
But in general, what you have to bear in mind is that as human beings, we are quite selfish and we're all about me, me, me. And often what happens is, if I want to build a name for myself, I will say I'm working for you, but really I'm working for myself. And, you know, just to answer that usually it tends to happen in an amazing way. I feel like you've done fine beyond for you to spend quality time with each individual, to have a cup of tea, because, you know, it's nice to have a conversation and to share in terms of what you've seen through history, because they've lived it. We're just coming in halfway, you know, in terms of what's happened previously. So that is amicable. So, you know, kudos to you for doing that, and for wanting to go on and feather on your research as well, moving to a different institute so that you can push on to implement the change. So, you know, congratulations. You've literally opened a door there for younger people. So, you know, keep it up in that sense. So in terms of wise words, what wise words do you have for anybody that's looking at their home country, that's gone through a lot of conflict, and they would like to work with policymakers to implement some change for the older generation? What advice would you have?
Wow, that's a really good question. So I truly believe in the power of social media. To be honest, I really love how new media can actually change and promote change. And I believe that's a tool that definitely younger generations are the most probably empowerment with those tools. So what I would say is the use of social media, it doesn't need to be like underestimated. To be honest, you have, well, of course, Black Lives Matter. Before you have Me Too. You have a lot of movements that they are really pushing some topics into the political discussion. And I truly believe that you can do that and you can push some stuff in there. And at some point, it's going to reach those people that you believe they are super far away. But to be honest, today, they are not so far away with social media. They are just a couple of tweets away, like
literally. And in terms of applying for a PhD, for example, if someone's applying from Chile and they want to go to the UK or to Germany, what advice would you give them if they wanted to relocate?
Yes. Well, maybe too many, but I'm going to concentrate myself. Yes. So I will say first, as a Chilean, I grew up in Talca, which is a tiny city. It's not the capital, the main one in the whole country. So definitely something that it was difficult at first, but it's going to be improved with time, is English. So for us in South America, all the countries speak in Spanish. So you don't need English, to be honest.
And then when we come on holiday, we say poco español.
Exactly. But it's because of that. It's you don't see so much people talking in English. So getting to used to the language is a huge barrier. But definitely if you start earlier, you are going to have a moment in which your brain is going to make click and you're going to say, okay, understanding, I can use this language and I can use this tool. And when you reach that stage, it's going to be amazing because you have a whole world of researchers, of a huge community that actually you can reach. So I would say concentrate yourself in the language for sure, but also concentrate yourself in keeping people together, like in collaborate with others. If you see a society that is talking about a specific topic that you like, maybe reach them and talk with them. Maybe they need somebody to help. That kind of networks actually in the long term are going to be super helpful.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So in terms of if they wanted to apply for a scholarship, would you advise for them to self-fund or apply for a scholarship? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So in my country, you have the Becas Chile. That is the goal. And it's a funding that is national funding. And it's really good because they found your whole research for 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. So that's amazing. And they give you a huge, like a huge period of funding. So you have the ability to do your PhD without the worry about the money, depending of where you are. Because obviously if you are in London, it's everything more expensive, but I was in Manchester, so it was really good to have the same scholarship, but in Manchester it's cheaper.
Yeah, but it's always raining, just for anybody who wants to move to Manchester, it's always raining, literally, umbrella, no flip-flops.
No way. I saw some people with flip-flops, but I never understood it. Like I was cold.
I don't understand it either.
I was with my umbrella always in my bag, like always, my computer and my umbrella. That's it. So what I would say is self-funding is an option. I know people who have done it. Mm-hmm. But if you are in Chile and you can apply to this scholarship, it would be the best option. I know that it's super competitive. You need to have articles, you need to have a good language, and you need to have an approval from a university first. You need a lot of paperwork, but definitely if you get all that done, it's going to be worth it at the end.
Excellent. And then finally, in terms of you coming on today, what made you say, yes, I want to go on PhD Hard Talk?
I will say that currently, I'm in a lot of different societies which are working to encourage people to do research, to collaborate, to engage with this stuff, especially in gender kind of oriented organizations.
Yeah.
So for me, it's definitely something relevant for me about the whole process and the whole PhD is also getting to make it visible, the whole process. Like sometimes we don't talk so much about the PhD or what is the process or how you fail many times. And at some point you reach that moment and you say, okay, this chapter is really good. But you have the whole process behind, right? So sometimes you only see the chapter or the article or the presentation in the conference that is super like perfect, but you don't see the process. And I definitely believe that in these kind of instances, like the PhD Hard Talk or other kind of podcasts or YouTube videos, or it's the only way in which you can actually make closer this stuff to people. You can say to them, you can do it. If I'm doing this, definitely you can do it. So don't stop, just continue with that. Yeah.
That is amazing. So which brings me to a close. So thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Francisca Ortiz Ruiz. Oh, I got it right.
Amazing. Yes.
So in terms of the next thing, basically, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and share. Get more people to watch our videos. And it's project dissemination to the world. We want our voices to be heard. We're conducting this research in different communities, and we're trying to implement change for the better, not just for a degree, but we want to implement change because we're passionate about our research. So please share the videos. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much.